Hello my dear friends and welcome back to another Star Wars video. So today we've got some pretty major tidbits and they all relate to the post-Return of the Jedi part of the Star Wars timeline. Our main topic is a big reveal concerning Luke, but first, a year on from The Mandalorian's third season, Lucasfilm has given us our first proper canon look at the new design for the Mythosaur, which we saw twice in Season 3, in the Mines of Mandalore, and again in the season finale, both times underwater. Now a couple of days ago, if you remember, I speculated how the legendary Mandalorian creature might come back to be very important in the Jon Favreau movie, but now we have our first proper look at it, out of water, up front. Now in early 2023, when rumours first came out about this creature showing up in the show, there were debates and speculation amongst fans of what kind of design Lucasfilm was going to go for. There had been fan art for years, and now we have a proper look. Some have made the joke that this creature looks like it's been shrink-wrapped. Yeah, I can kind of see that. I think it looks pretty epic though, and seeing it in its entirety is going to be a treat if, like I say, Jon Favreau does throw it into the movie. We only got a small tease in Season 3. Grogu felt it, and Bo-Katan swears that she saw it, which we know she did. And I came across a comment where someone made a suggestion that I think is quite ludicrous and I'm hoping they don't do. It's something Dave Filoni would do. Make the Mythosaur talk. I don't want them to do it. That kind of thing worked for Bendu, but for goodness sake, allow this legendary Mythosaur to keep its mystique. I don't want it to have some deep voice and be able to speak Galactic Basic. But now on to our main topic. The mainline 2020 Star Wars comics are coming to an end. We've got the final battle of the Galactic Civil War, the Battle of Jakku trilogy coming soon, but the mainline is coming to a close. And in issues number 49, and next week we've got issue number 50, Star Wars is answering a couple of mysteries from the sequel trilogy. They're not shying away from addressing some of the more controversial aspects of those three films. So, you guys remember Leia using the Force in space in The Last Jedi, more commonly known as Leia Poppins. She didn't fly, but rather used the Force to pull herself back to the ship. The intention wasn't the issue, because we already knew she had the Force, but it was the execution that looked very silly, and fans for years have been discussing it as one of the worst moments of Episode 8. While the new comic, issue number 49, has doubled down on this Force ability, and revealed that between the events of The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, years prior to the sequel trilogy, it was Luke who taught Leia how to do this, because we see him doing it himself. Using the Force to pull yourself through space was established decades before the events of The Last Jedi. It's pretty remarkable that Lucasfilm is leaning into it, rather than trying to avoid the situation, which has sort of been the more common approach. And it's more poignant, because in the comic it comes during a point where Luke is not yet fully trained. It's before his final confrontation with Vader, when he's still got this yellow lightsaber which, as you guys know, I've had grievances with. But he hasn't yet returned to Dagobah. Now after the original trilogy, as confirmed by The Rise of Skywalker in flashbacks, Luke does train Leia. Even in the expanded universe, we know from Heir to the Empire that Leia learnt a lot from Luke. But the biggest takeaway from this revelation in this new comic is the confirmation that Leia learned enough in her training to pull off a similar feat later in the timeline in The Last Jedi. A Force ability she saw her brother use. But that's not all, my dear friends, because in the upcoming issue, Star Wars issue number 50, Lucasfilm is giving us a part of Luke's story which I personally think warrants more than just a comic. This is something they should have explored in live action, or at the very least, an animated show. This takes place before the events of The Force Awakens on Ossus, where Luke has his Jedi Academy. You'll probably remember the setting from the Book of Boba Fett and the vision given to Rey in The Force Awakens. Now you've probably noticed, whenever Disney Star Wars, since the sequel trilogy has gone back to touch upon the story of Luke, it always comes with skepticism and a bit of worry. The Mandalorian Season 2 and Book of Boba Fett did the best job of showing off the post-Episode 6 Luke that fans always hope to see after Return of the Jedi. A Luke that is more like his original depiction, one who is full of hope, one who is even very similar to the way he's portrayed in the Thrawn trilogy. I will just say as an aside, I do have a criticism about the way the Book of Boba Fett handled Luke. Instead of CGing Mark Hamill's face over Scott Lang, the likeness of the fill-in was more than enough to portray Luke, and it would have been much more human. But like I say, my dear friends, as we await the possible appearance of Luke in The Mandalorian and Grogu, Ahsoka Season 2, or other New Republic content, today we have a preview that shows us Luke at his academy with Ben Solo. This warrants its own show, and as you're about to see, the comic even makes fun of itself, and inadvertently addresses a fan criticism that has come up more than a few times in recent years. Let's dive in. Ossus, the Jedi Temple, long after the Empire's fall, a time of peace. Luke says, "Come take a walk with me, Ben. I'd like to tell you a story." So there you have Ben Solo, looking very Han Solo-like. He looks very much like his dad. He's meditating in his room, and they go for this walk. "What do you want to tell me, Master Skywalker?" And Luke says, "You're almost ready for the trials, Ben. Soon enough, you'll be making your own decisions out there in the galaxy as a Jedi Knight. You won't have to listen to me anymore." And Ben, soon to be Kylo Ren, replies, "I'm sure I'll always listen to you, Master. You'll always hear me, but that doesn't mean you'll always act exactly as I would. That's the journey of a master and apprentice." And I've got to say, guys, that is a brilliant lesson from Luke. We see this play out throughout Star Wars, between Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, learning lessons from his master but being distinctively different and making his own choices, Dooku and Qui-Gon, in Legends, Mace Windu and Depa Billaba, but we also see it recently in the book The Living Force. Luke goes on to say, "My teaching should be something you build on, reinterpreted for yourself, and the choices you have to make. But there's something else. Considering, well, your family, your skill in the Force, and that you'll be one of the first students to complete your training, it seems likely that you'll hold a position of leadership in the Jedi Order to come." Ironic words, considering Ben's fate. Leaders have to make decisions, tough ones. Sometimes choices are about life and death. I want to tell you a story from my own past that may guide you if and when a choice like that falls to you. And at this point, I was sure he was going to tell him about Grogu and the choice he had to make, but he doesn't. He mentions something else. "Let's sit," he says. "This is a story about me, your mother, your Uncle Lando, Chewbacca, and the droids were there too, 3PO and R2-D2. And then Ben asks, "But not my dad. I'd love to hear what he was up to." "Actually, Ben, this happened during a very difficult period in your father's life. He was the prisoner of a gangster named Jabba the Hutt." And Ben replies, "I know about that. He told me. I've heard so many stories about that time. Lando told me about some gangster war and droids going haywire and killing people, and Mum talked about the trouble the Alliance had after the Battle of Hoth. How did all of that happen in just a year?" And this, my dear friends, is Lucasfilm self-aware and responding to the fan criticism that how did all of these events, many of which were established in these comic runs, take place in 1 year, between The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. So that is the preview for issue number 50 coming next week. And I've got to say, Ben Solo's training, his fall, the fall of Luke's temple, is an aspect of this point in the timeline fans are fascinated about and have been ever since episode 7. I'm hoping they do something with this in animation, but for now, my dear friends, it's going to be exhibited in the final issue of the Star Wars 2020 comic run. What do you guys think? Share your thoughts on everything we spoke about in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to give me a big fat thumbs up, subscribe if you're new, check me out on socials, and may the Force be with you, always.